If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is Bruce McGuire, a scientific and logical podcast coming at you today on the nature of debunking debunks or debunking debunkers. As always, if you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications to get updates on the latest podcast. And if you like this podcast, hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms. Any questions, comments, theories, or rebuttals, leave them in the comment section. Make sure you like and follow our Facebook page for exclusive updates not available anywhere else. And you can also check us out Twitter, Reddit, and Patreon. So very often the layperson might see something, oh, this was debunked. XYZ is debunked. Oh, well, that settles that. Well, wait a second. Science is never settled. The very nature of science is inquisition, logical, neutral, observation and analysis following the scientific method. Just the very nature of reason itself is not of religious dogma. It's the opposite. Everything is always open to be discussed and rebutted. So, I first encountered this, I don't know, a lot of people probably know about ancient aliens, especially listening to MINDSHOCK for conspiratorial and alien paranormal type topics and mysteries of mankind. There was this online video, this long debunk of ancient aliens titled Ancient Aliens Debunked. And of course it was cherry-picking, logically fallacious, and it focused only on either small errors or unsubstantiated claims while completely ignoring an abundant body of evidence to the main point. Now, by the way, I don't subscribe to the ancient alien theory. I think it's interesting. Of course, it could be true, but I'm not saying this as a defense of ancient aliens in any way. I'm just saying the debunking. The ancient aliens debunked was very, very silly, but to the average layperson who doesn't use logic or reason or follow science, neutral objective science. So, and of course, that's why logical fallacies are so important to know and understand so you don't fall for them, because almost every debunk of anything out there is just riddled with fallacies and not sound reason. And then there was, and then the rebuttal to that, and this is all years and years ago, was Ancient Aliens Debunked, where someone else pointed out how the debunking was not valid, or most of the debunking was not valid. And you go back and forth forever. I mean, that's actually the very nature of science. So saying something was debunked or proven untrue when in relation to theories, I mean, that's anti-science. Because science isn't about definite religious dogma. It's not about blindly accepting as gospel truth whatever's peddled by priests of whatever religion or scientism or whatever theory. That's not what science is. It's the opposite of that. It's always being skeptical of all claims from all sides. And how often are debunkings actually neutral? They're usually hit pieces. And many times they're hit pieces against truth. So if you have a conspiracy theorist coming up with some theory, there'll be something, oh, that came out, that was debunked. Another good case is the whole Pizzagate scandal. There was a pretty heated episode of Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan's podcast, when he had Eddie Bravo and Brian Callen, the one of the leading coincidence theorists in the world, who just really doesn't like logic or reason or science. But some people think he's a pretty heavy shill because his father's involved in the in the banking industry and peddling for governments and politicians. However, he got really, really emotional and desperately was crying, "That's been debunked! It's been debunked, Eddie! It's been debunked!" It's pretty funny. It's one of the funniest Joe Rogan podcasts. And he just starting to get hysterical of how it's been debunked when it actually wasn't debunked. So it's just people making claims and saying, oh, well, that can't be true because of this. And then that was never fact-checked, but it's just taken as gospel truth and then viewed as a debunking up. Now, in other cases, we can look at something more scientific, like Run Z Cow's debunking of Einstein's relativity. I mean, it's a systematic point-by-point debunk. Now, that's still, I mean, obviously relativity can still be true, but when none of the points actually stand up to logic or reason or science, and you have to rely on religious faith to hold relativity together, like Einstein said of his own theory, that it being a house of cards, but nobody's come out to debunk Run Z Cow's debunking, because I guess they can't. If they could, they would, and then that should be accepted neutrally as well, because maybe the theory of relativity is true. Maybe there's all these things we don't know about, all these unknown variables that somehow will make it true, but why cling to it dogmatically and illogically if that has not been done? So there's debunkings of all kinds, but in general, whenever there's some kind of conspiracy theory makes it to the mainstream, like Alex Jones debunked, and then they pick one thing he was wrong about while ignoring all these other things. Of course, that's not accidental. That's a hit piece. So, which is actually quite hilarious, because Alex Jones, he might be a shill too. If you haven't checked out the MindShock episode, Conspiracy Shills, we go over Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, and David Icke on that one. And it's just interesting because Alex Jones has been right so much that I guess they had to deplatform him without even giving a specific reason for the deplatforming, because apparently reporting on other people's claims, aka journalism, that was frowned upon when it came to certain conspiracy theories, as if there are certain things that can't be questioned. So that's pretty anti-science to say that something has such religious reverence that it cannot be questioned. You cannot exercise science when it relates to ABC. You can do it on XYZ, but not ABC. So that's pretty much as anti-science as you could get. Once again, the truth is not afraid of investigation. So if the truth is that obvious, why are institutions, why are all these people pushing agendas, why are they so terrified of people asking questions? People demanding evidence, irrefutable evidence, evidence that stands up to logical scrutiny and does not require religious faith in scientism or authority or government institutions or whatnot. So that's why debunking debunkers and just debunking debunks is so interesting, because often, again, it's public perception, once something has been so-called debunked, it's as if there can't be a debunking for the debunking. Of course they can. That can go back and forth many times. I mean, that's, again, the very nature of science itself, is to question and be skeptical of everything and being open to new evidence and new interpretations. And most people are not, because most people are so hopelessly indoctrinated into their religious faith-based system, whatever it may be, whether it's a religion, whether it's scientism, whether it's worshiping the government that can never be wrong about anything, and if you learned it in school, and if it's in the government text, then it has to be gospel truth and it can never be questioned. Or if it's the mainstream media reporting something, it has to be gospel truth, can never be questioned. Otherwise it wouldn't be on the news, right? So a lot of silliness pervades our modern society when it comes to conspiracy theories and debunks. And nobody wants to talk about the coincidence theorists, the mainstream, that they're coincidence theorists. Everything's a coincidence. And there could never be people working together in concert to do anything bad ever. Only people working alone. Quite amusing. But to round out that point about Brian Callen crying about, it's been debunked. Obviously it hasn't, and with all these new allegations with Epstein and all of this, people can say that there probably was something going on with the whole Pizzagate thing. Very, very dark. People don't want it to be true, so of course cognitive dissonance and all these other psychological fallacies, if they're too mentally weak to accept even the possibility that there's some bad people out there doing bad things, it's much more comforting to stick your head in the sand and pretend conspiracy theories aren't real and pretend that none of this could ever be going on for any reason, no matter what. But again, if they're that adamant, why is everybody so terrified of investigation? Why is everybody so terrified of people asking for evidence to believe something? It doesn't really make any sense to someone scientifically minded or logical, or someone that wants to employ even basic reason. Because even small children, the indoctrination process is long and grueling, but early on in the process, even children, they're not necessarily going to accept. They're going to ask all those annoying questions. Why? Why? And if you can't give good answers, they might not want to believe it. And then, of course, they're beaten down into submission over many, many years of rigorous government schooling, where if they don't regurgitate the answer that the government wants on command, they're going to get a bad grade. And then they're going to get a lot of flack from the school, from the teachers, from their parents, from society as a whole. You must be an obedient little slave. Do not be logical or scientific. You must accept this dogma that's pretending to be science. So you got to always be wary of debunking. Not that they're not legitimate, they might be. Let them speak on its own merit, not that the fact that there is a debunk that somehow means that whatever was debunked was actually debunked. Because most of the time, most of the debunkings that I've seen were relatively fallacious. They were just cherry-picking a few poor points in a presentation while ignoring the strong points, and grasping quite some straws to push their own narrative or agenda. There have been very, very few well-done debunks. Of course, Run Z Cow's debunk of Einstein's relativity comes to mind. That one is quite sound. I think there was Miles Mathis, a pretty fringe, extreme conspiracy theorist by most accounts. He did I don't know if I'd call it was it a debunk? He did an expose on the Cavendish experiment, which is quite interesting for the geocentrists and the flat earthers, on explaining why the Cavendish experiment was just very, very fallacious in the sort of assumption that it proved gravity and or the motion of the Earth when it did not. So that's another pretty good debunk. So a lot of the physics debunks are pretty decent when they're using math and known laws of physics to debunk theories of physics. Again, one must employ logic and reason to understand all of those points, instead of just religiously and dogmatically assuming or jumping to conclusions or beliefs. Belief is the enemy of knowing. Heard that one online quite a bit. If you're always wanting to cling to a belief, it's very, very strange. Most people, the layperson, for whatever reason, they're desperately longing to have a belief. Even in the flat earth conspiracy theory. Are you a flat earther or are you a heliocentric globe earther? You cannot remain agnostic. That's impossible. You must jump to an assumption with limited information. You're either going to trust this group of liars and or misinformed and or incompetent people, or you must trust this other group of liars and or incompetent people and or misinformed people. Do not remain a fence-sitter. Well, I mean, technically, being scientific is being a fence-sitter. Like, why would you jump to a conclusion? Why would you instantly believe a so-called debunk, whether it's legitimate or not? I'll be doing a dedicated podcast on science versus pseudoscience, because a lot of people don't know the difference. And scientism, of course, is in the pseudoscience category. But that's all for now. Just be wary of debunks, and always know there's usually a debunk for the debunk, and then there might be a debunk on the debunk of the original debunk, and then there might be a debunk of that as well. So stay vigilant out there for the real truth seekers, who will always remain objective and scientific. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the MindShock podcast, where the only thing for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button and make sure to share it across social media platforms. Questions, comments, thoughts, rebuttals, debunking. Leave them in the comment section. You can also check us out, Twitter, Reddit, and Patreon. And, of course, like and follow our Facebook page for exclusive content. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.